Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is now facing more than criticism. It's facing delays as well as rumors that it will get delayed all the way into 2024. I was sort of shocked at the negative response to this game. It was immense. I thought it looked fun, sort of like a throwaway summer game, play with some friends, just run around and shoot stuff. I wasn't expecting this game to be anything more than what I saw. And maybe that's on me. Maybe my expectations weren't in the right place. But apparently, this 4-player shooter action-adventure game that many people thought was going to be very different, maybe less focused on shooting, maybe not looking so much like Fortnite, is now facing criticism from articles. I've got one here from The Gamer I'm going to be kind of reacting to that says there's no fixing Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. And I do think some people think the game is doomed. Mainly, it's breaking down into two main categories as I see it. There are people that say it's live service. We're sick of live service. Live service is terrible. I often get in debates with these people and say, what live service games are you talking about? There's plenty of games that do live service successfully and do it well. I happen to think sometimes people get a little burned out on one live service game in particular, or they just sort of play the dickens out of a game and then they don't want to play anything else that's even structured in a similar way. But then there also was sort of criticism about the gameplay. It's just sort of too gun-focused, too shooting-focused, which I do think it did look a little bit sort of like a limited-time mode from Fortnite, kind of with the movement and the jumping and the aerials and everything, but I also thought it looked fun. Again, that's just me. I know many people don't agree with me. Many people were not expecting it to be a looter. They were not expecting it to have sort of like the ongoing thing, and I want to read this article because I'm very curious to see where they go with it. I'm curious to see what you think as well, so be sure to leave comments below with where you land on this. So this one written by Stacy Henley saying, Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League has reportedly been delayed, but there's not enough time to completely change its live service roots. I actually agree with the premise of this article. I don't think they're going to be able to completely change the foundations of the game to give people what they wanted. I've seen a lot of people say, you know, what's wrong with single-player games? Why couldn't we just get a single-player game? You know, or why does it need to be a live service? Maybe not need to be single-player, but why does it need to be live service? I went back and read some of the original press briefings on this when it first was described, and from the very beginning, just reading a game that was sort of an action-adventure shooter that was going to have up to 4-player co-op, I was kind of expecting it to fall into a live service lane. I'm wondering if people are sort of so anti-live service, maybe they're not looking for the clues when they're staring them right in the face. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see what the article here argues. Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is currently down on the floor, gasping for breath, blood spraying from its teeth. Yikes. So I'm not going to kick it any further. I actually resonate with that sentence. Sometimes when things aren't going well for a game, I kind of feel bad, you know, kicking it while it's down. In fact, I'm going to rack my brain for a nice thing to say about it. The characters all seem to have well-established and authentic personalities in the cutscenes we've seen so far. I actually also think the character design is quite good. I got into a debate with people about, it doesn't look that good, and we went back and we looked at the character design of Harley Quinn specifically in Arkham Knight. I think you'll be shocked at just how much games have improved. I think people forget that. I remember recently I was reacting to a Jedi Survivor video, and they showed Jedi Fallen Order sort of back to back with Survivor, and I was like, wow, I didn't realize they had made the graphics so much better. They made Cal look so much better. Go look up some pictures and some images of Harley Quinn in game and in cutscenes, and I think you'll start to notice we're getting a little jaded. We're getting a little lulled to sleep here. Graphical improvements are noticeable, and I think sometimes we don't notice them because our memory is, the last game looked amazing, this one doesn't look that much better, because at the time, Arkham Knight looked incredible. It's aged very well, but I will say that's another thing that is worth saying about the game that is positive. The most important thing for me personally was the game got Harley Quinn right, and it appears to have done that. So good job, but I won't lie. The latest trailer did not make it look good, and pretty much everyone agreed. So much so that the game has reportedly been delayed into late 2023. As recently as 2 weeks ago, the PlayStation Showcase emphasized the May 26th release date and could even be bumped to 2024. Now, it's not been confirmed that the negative reaction is the reason for the delay, but I can't see a way to see this any other way. You just a couple of weeks ago released the trailer and you say, oh yeah, it's coming out May 26th. That's 2 months from now. I don't see how you push that out and you were in the dark about developmental problems or challenges or bugs. This is sort of a Halo Infinite scenario. If you remember, Halo Infinite debuted. The negative press was so bad, they delayed the game by like an entire year. This game got similar, really bad response. Tons of downvotes. Everybody was really angry, which again, totally took me by surprise, but here we are. But there's just no fixing it. Suicide Squad is what it is. I actually think that's a fair take. I don't think... If you think this game's going to get delayed to like late 2023, let's just say they aim for the holidays. That's not a terrible time to release games like this. Everybody's looking for something fun to play. I still think that's kind of what this game looks like. It's just like a fun throwaway game, right? You play it for a little while with your buds. Maybe they do fun events and you come back every now and again and you play it. You know, I actually think that's dead on, though, that it's not going to be dramatically different when it does finally land, whenever that happens. One thing to stress is that I haven't played Kill the Justice League. No one in the media has played it. We're basing this off of clips we've seen, not from personal experience. But when we've all played enough video games to spot a good one from a bad one, and this sure looks like a bad one. See, what I would want to do is I would want to go see what Stacy thought of Gotham Knights before it came out, because I tried to warn everybody about Gotham Knights. I said it looks terrible, character animations and combat look like a glorified mobile game, and I got a lot of hate for that. And Gotham Knights came out and got treated exactly as it should have. It was a pretty bad game. It performed terribly. It was very simplistic. It was a huge step back from Arkham Knight. Stop comparing it to Arkham Knight. I don't know how you don't compare it to Arkham Knight. It's an open world game with Batman characters in Gotham City, and the primary means of combat is punching. Like, I don't know how you don't compare that to Arkham Knight, but whatever. I would be really curious to see. They're basically saying in this article that, hey, we can tell the difference between a good and a bad game. This is a bad one. This looks 1,000 times better than Gotham Knights, and so many people were all over me, giving me criticism and hate and calling me a hater because I was trying to tell people from Jump Street something's wrong with Gotham Knights, and nobody listened. I would be very interested to see what Stacy's coverage was of that game before, during, and after it came out. The only question is, how did Rocksteady not know this? The developers at Rocksteady have all played a ton of video games too, and unlike us, they've made them too. In this case, in the case of those who were around when the studio made the Arkham trilogy, they haven't just made any old video games. They've already made what many hold as the pinnacle of the genre. Surely they knew as well as we did that this didn't look good. Now, they haven't indicated why it doesn't look good. They're just saying it doesn't. But why? What's the problem? Yes, the enemies were pretty throwaway, and the combat was very sort of unidimensional, but I got the feeling that we were sort of watching one slice of the game. Here's a fight. Here's how the fight's going to go. Here's an enemy type, you know. And I said, listen, if that's what the fights and the enemy types are throughout the entire game, I'll be right there with you and say this game's just not very good. But it was one slice. I don't see why everybody's jumping to the conclusion that this looks so bad, it doesn't look like a good game at all. I don't get where they're coming from. Unless they were thinking, Rocksteady, Arkham games, we're going to get an Arkham-style game with these characters. Well, then I could see why you were disappointed. Maybe my reading of the press briefings just gave me a very different impression, so like I went in sort of expecting what we saw. Okay, I said it. I wouldn't kick them anymore. I understand how all this has happened. Video games take too long to make these days, and as a result, it's hard to make a game that you know the audience is going to eat up. That's an extremely fair way to frame this. I really like that they've said that, because when this game was made, you know, when they started making the groundwork and the framework of it, you have to remember, everybody's trying to cut into the live service pie. And this game probably thought, hey, let's grab some heroes, let's give people 4-player co-op, and instead of you playing by yourself, you can play with a bunch of people. It was always a requested feature in the Arkham games to give us co-op. You have some co-op fights where you play with an AI interchangeably, whether it's Catwoman or Nightwing or Robin, and sometimes that was the thought of, oh, this would be fun with another person. That's what Gotham Knights tried to give us, and I think it fundamentally failed to do that. Maybe they were doing the same thing. Hey, let's build this game. I mean, look at Avengers, how bad it turned out. Many people, I think, were setting their sights on the live service slice of the market, and they failed to deliver a good product because I don't think companies have adequately figured out how to do live service yet. I believe we're about to enter another phase of that because I think better games are going to start coming out, Diablo 4 being one of those games. Back when online play heralded a more advanced cooperative future and live service RPG elements with 13.6% better ballistic damage against Batman-infused enemies sounding exciting, a game like Suicide Squad made sense. Right now, in the years it has taken from roots to become fruits, it no longer does. If Anthem heralded the beginning of the end, the quick 1-2 punch of Marvel's Avengers and Gotham Knights confirmed the end of the end. Suicide Squad is a ghost, a specter of their deaths to haunt our consoles. Man, I like the way they wrote that, but I don't agree. I don't think Anthem heralded the end of the live service era. It heralded the end of cheap attempts at live service. Anthem wasn't built for live service. You could tell there was no end game. There was no ongoing content plan that would have even satisfied the most casual live service player. And that's the problem I have every time the live service debate comes up. People will claim that live service ruins games, but they ignore all of the games that are doing it successfully, and they point to games that did it so abysmally that they failed. You don't have a problem with live service games, you have a problem with bad games. There are plenty of games that come out and flop and are abysmal and bad, and they're not live service. These games just happen to be live service. They failed at doing good live service elements, but that's not an indictment of an entire game type. I think that's far too presumptuous, especially with games like Diablo 4 on the horizon. Suicide Squad might well be the best of the most three, but as the next live service numbies go up, superhero game obsessed with gradual upgrades instead of the comic book power fantasy, it is doomed to indifference after we've been burned before. See, and the unfair thing here is, Guardians of the Galaxy got nominations and did very well, but it didn't do well commercially, and it was Avengers' fault. We can't shortchange every game that comes out now and smells like Avengers or Gotham Knights. We've got to give some games a chance. I don't think this game's gotten a chance. I'm telling you this right now. I'm going to go on record. If Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League trailers and the game would have come out before Avengers and before Gotham Knights, I don't think we'd be having this conversation. I think we're looking at this game through the lens of how bad those games were. But again, no kicking, they say. That last pun was the end, I promise. The bigger point here is that Suicide Squad will always be Suicide Squad. Would it be cooler if it was single-player Harley Quinn game where you unlock a series of increasingly silly and violent weapons to take down your superpowered foes? Sure. I don't actually agree with that. We've played that game before. We have. You've played that game before where you have a character, you go around the city, you beat everybody up, and you get skills and new abilities. We've played that game before. We've played all three of the Arkham games. Well, 4 if you count the one that I never played, but the 3 that really matter. We've played all 3 of those. There's 2 Spider-Man games you can play where that's basically what you do, and I love those games. I do. I love all the Batman games. I love Spider-Man. We didn't need another game like that. I got news for you. If they would have done that, that's the conversation we'd be having. It's just another beat-em-up superhero game where you plod through the story and get gadgets and new things. Like, I guarantee you that's would have been a take many people would have had. Here we go. But that's not what it is. It's a game where you give Captain Boomerang and King Shark machine guns with constant minor upgrades that give 12.5% faster reload speed. This is probably the fairest criticism that I've seen. I do think that is a strange idea that they had to make everybody like gun-toting. Maybe we haven't seen enough of the game. Maybe they need to elaborate more into the melee-style combat, but looking at the menus in the inventory, it seems heavily leaning towards the guns. That's what the game is. No getting away from it. It took Rocksteady years to make it, and a few months to delay it won't help the studio unmake it. I completely agree with that take. The time for this kind of game has passed already, but it's finished. The schedule of releases is pretty open, and the characters do seem solid. Here's the thing. I don't agree that the time for this era of game has passed away. I completely disagree with that. I do not believe we have seen a true ongoing live service shooter. I don't think anybody's attempted it. Destiny's still doing it, but not very well. They're getting heavily criticized. The last season that came even before the current one was heavily criticized for. It's the same old, same old. We've done this all before. And then the current thing that landed that was supposed to be a big moment for the game hasn't been a big moment for the game. I think they're kind of running out of railroad because it's a game that's been out for probably far too long. It was never intended to be this long. I think somebody can make the next big looter shooter. I think somebody can make the next big live service game. It's the fact that I think so many people saw money signs and they rushed games to market, and that's what we keep getting. That doesn't mean that Kill the Justice League is that. We don't know. We haven't played it yet. That's your lot. Delaying it for a few months so it's competing with Spider-Man 2 is stupid, and delaying it further than that turns into an expensive laughingstock like Skull and Bones. I actually really like this author, even though I don't necessarily agree with them. No, the reception is not what you hope for, but a delay only makes it worse, and you can't fix that. The foundation is made of sand. At least let us make our own fun and build sandcastles. The delay is only a report at this stage, albeit a fairly solid one with a few reliable sources that have corroborated. I hope Warner Brothers changes its mind because the game will always be slightly out of time. Delaying it will only make the problem worse. Okay, I don't agree with some of the baked-in premises of the article. It's well written. I think they argue their case quite well, even though I'm not convinced that the era for live service, shooty-up games with loot, I don't agree that that era has passed. You have to point to some of the worst games that have come out. Gotham Knights, Avengers. Anthem wasn't even necessarily a bad game. It just did not have anything to do after the initial sort of content loop and campaign. Like, there was nothing to do. Those are terrible examples. You can't run to the worst examples and the worst offenders and say, yeah, the era of live service is over. Even though Destiny's getting its teeth kicked in from the review outlets and from the player base, it's still around after many years. And Path of Exile's still around. Diablo 3's still doing seasons. No Man's Sky's doing expeditions. Diablo 4's around the corner. Live service games are not leaving. They're coming. In fact, Sony wants to make like 10 or 12 before 2026. It's not a question of whether or not live service games are here or are they worth playing. The question is, where are the good ones? That's what we're going to have to decide when these games come out. And I'm going to give Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League a fair shake because for now, I don't think it's gotten one. I think we're jumping the gun, which is a little ironic considering all the guns in the game. As always, if you like this video, hit subscribe, hit the bell button, and I'll see you in the next one.